A Treatise of Satan's Temptations. By Richard Gilpin. A Discourse of the Malice, Power, Cruelty and Diligence of Satan. Second part of Chapter 10. That Satan enticeth by our lust. The several ways by which he doth it. Of the power and danger of the violence of affections. 4. Fourthly, Satan hath yet a further reach in his enticements, by the power which he hath upon our fancies and imaginations. That he hath such a power was discovered before. This being then supposed, how serviceable it is for his end it is now to be considered. Our fancy is as a glass, which, with admirable celerity and quickness of motion, can present before us all kinds of objects. It can in a moment run from one end of the earth to the other, and besides this, it hath the power of creating objects, and casting them into what forms and shapes it pleaseth, all which our understanding cannot avoid the sight of. Now the power of imagination is acknowledged by all to be very great, not only as working upon a melancholy and distempered spirit, of which authors give us large accounts, but also upon minds more remote, from such peremptory delusions, as may be daily observed in the prejudices and prepossessions of men, who by reason of the impressions of imagination, are not without difficulty drawn over to the acknowledgment of the truth of things, and the true understanding of matters. Neither is the understanding only liable to a more than ordinary heat and rapture by it, but the will is also quickened, and sharpened in its desires by this means. Hence is it, as one of the foresighted authors observes, that fancy doth often more toward a persuasion by its insinuations, than a cogent argument or rational demonstration. This is no less a powerful instrument in Satan's hand, than commonly and frequently made use of. Who amongst us doth not find and feel him, dealing with us at this weapon? When he propounds an object to our lust, he doth not usually expose it naked, under the hazard of dying out for want of prosecution, but presently calls in our fancy to his aid, and there raiseth a theatre, on which he acts before our minds, the sin in all its ways and postures. If he put us upon revenge, or upon lusts of uncleanness, or covetousness, or ambition, we are sure, if we prevent it not, to have our imagination presenting these things to us, as in lively pictures and resemblances, by which our desires may be inflamed, and prepared for consent. 5. Fifthly, sometime he shows his art, in preparing and fitting our bodies to his designs, or in fitting temptations to our bodies and the inclinations thereof. The soul, though it be a noble being, yet is it limited by the body, and incommodated by the craziness and indispositions thereof, so that it can no more act strenuously, or evenly, to its principles in a disordered body, than it can rightly manage any member of it, in its natural motions, where the bones are disjointed. Hence, sickness or other bodily weaknesses, do alter the scene, and add another kind of bias to the soul, than what it had before. This, Satan takes notice of, and either follows his advantage of the present indisposition, or, if he hath some special design, endeavors to cast our body into such a disorder as may best suit his intention. Asa was more easily drawn to be overseen in peevishness, and rash anger in his latter days, when his body grew diseased. Satan had his advantage against Solomon to draw him to idolatry, when old age and uxoriousness had made him more ductile to the solicitations of his wives. When Solomon was old, his wives turned away his heart. 1 Kings 11:4. The devil, when he took upon him to foretell Job's blaspheming God to his face, yet he attempted not the main design till he thought he had thoroughly prepared him for it, by the anguish and smart of a distempered body and mind. And though he failed in the great business of his boast, yet he left us an experiment in Job, that the likeliest way to prevail upon the mind, in hideous and desperate temptations, is to mold the body to a suitable frame. He prevailed not against Job to cause him curse God, yet he prevailed far. He cursed the day of his birth, and spake many things by the force of that distress, which he prophesieth himself ashamed of afterwards. The body then will be in danger, when it is disordered, to give a tincture to every action, as a distempered palate communicates a bitterness, to everything it takes down. 6. Sixthly, evil company is a general preparatory to all kinds of temptation. He enticeth strongly that way. 4. 1. Evil society doth insensibly dead the heart, and quench the heat of the affections to the things of God. It hath a kind of bewitching power, to eat out the fear of the Lord in our hearts, and to take off the weight and power of religious duty. It not only stops our tongues, and retards them in speaking of good things, but influenceth the very heart, and poisons it into a kind of deadness and lethargy, so that our thoughts run low, and we begin to think that severe watchfulness of thoughts, and the guard of our minds to be a needless and melancholy self-imposition. 2. example hath a strange insinuating force to enstamp a resemblance, and to beget imitation. Joseph, living where his ears were frequently beaten with oaths, finds it an easy thing, upon a feigned occasion, to swear by the life of Pharaoh. Genesis 42:15. Evil company is sin's nursery and Satan's academy, by which he trains up those whose knowledge and hopeful beginnings had made them shy of his temptations, and if he can prevail with men to take such companions, he will with a little labor, presently bring them to any iniquity. 7. Seventhly, but his highest project in order to the enticing of men, is to engage their affections to a height and passionateness. The Scripture doth distinguish betwixt the pi iota theta upsilon mu alpha sigma and pi alpha theta mu alpha tau alpha, the affections and lusts, Galatians 5:24. Clearly implying that the way to procure fixed desires, and actual lustings, is to procure those passionate workings of the mind. How powerful a part of his design this is, will appear from the nature of these passions, which are 1. First, violent motions of the heart, the very wings and sails of the soul, and every passion, in its own working, doth express a violence. Choler is an earnest rage. Voluptuousness is nothing less, fear is a desperate hurry of the soul. Love strong as death. Jealousy cruel as the grave, each of them striving which should excel in violence, so that it is a question, yet undetermined which passion may challenge the superiority. 2. Secondly, their fury is dangerous and unbridled. Like so many wild horses let loose, hurrying their rider, which way they please. They move not upon the command of reason, but oft prevented in their sudden rise, neither do they take reason's advice for their course proportionable to the occasion, for often their humor, rather than the matter of the provocation, gives them spurs. And when they have evaporated their heat, they cease, not as following the command of reason, but as weakened by their own violence. 3. Thirdly, they are not easily conquered. Not only because they renew their strength, and onset after a defeat, and, like so many hydras' heads, spring up as fast as cut off. But they are ourselves, we can neither run from them, nor from the love of them. 4. Fourthly, and consequently, highly advantageous in Satan's design and enticement, when they are driven up to a fury and passionateness. For besides their inward rage, which the Scripture calls burning, 1 Corinthians 7:9, Romans 1:27, by which men are pricked and goaded on, without rest or ease, to make provisions for the flesh, and to enjoy or act what their unbridled violence will lead to, in the execution of their desires, they carry along before them, and engage the whole man with the highest eagerness, to fulfill every lust, Ephesians 2:3, to go up to the highest degrees, and with an unsatiable greediness, to yield themselves servants of iniquity unto iniquity, Romans 5:19. Thanks.